President Biden's administration was an inflation machine. We saw inflation get as high at one point as 10%. What's that mean? It means that prices were going up every day, every month, at the rate of 10% annualized. Bidenomics, in most people's minds, became paying more to live worse. There are three things that we're doing to try to get these prices down. Number one, reduce spending. You see it every single day from President Trump. He said he was going to audit federal spending, and that's exactly what he's doing. Now, there's some people that are mad. There are people that are very mad at President Trump and Mr. Musk and others for discovering all this waste. The people who are mad don't seem to be mad at the people who caused the waste. They're mad at the president and Mr. Musk for finding the waste. I find that a little bit ironic. But the point is, we're trying to reduce spending.
What's up, Patriots? Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're anything like me, you've probably had it up to here with this disastrous inflation and the out-of-control spending that came from Biden administration. So today, we're diving into a speech from Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, where he lays out exactly what Congress needs to do to unplug the Biden admin's inflation machine. And let me tell you, he's not pulling any punches. But before we get into it, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you never miss an update. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get into it. Wow, now that was refreshing. Senator John Kennedy is one of the few people in Washington who isn't afraid to tell it like it is. He's standing up for the American people, pointing out the simple truth. Inflation is a massive issue, and the Democrats are largely responsible for it. But what really hits home is how he lays the blame squarely on President Biden's reckless spending spree. And as a right-wing patriot, I'm right there with him. Let's break this down because Kennedy hits on some key points here that we need to talk about.
The thing I want to talk about, Mr. President, is a subject that some people want to avoid, but I don't. And the American people don't. It's on the minds of every American. That's high prices. And I know there are other issues that are important that we're talking about. Male athletes in women's sports, that's important. Immigration, that's important. National security, we're talking about that, that's important. The Middle East, Ukraine. And I could go on, but the single most important issue that moms and dads worry about in America today when they lie down to sleep at night and can't is inflation, high prices. I don't want to dwell on the past, but President Biden's administration was an inflation machine. We saw inflation get as high at one point as 10%. What's that mean? It means that prices were going up every day, every month, at the rate of 10% annualized. Bidenomics, in most people's minds, became paying more to live worse. I mean, inflation just was gutting the American people like a fish, and it happened because of all this breathtaking amount of money that President Biden's administration spent, trillions of dollars. The American Rescue Plan, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, they injected trillions of dollars into the economy. Frankly, as we're finding out now, most of it in wasteful spending that caused too many dollars to chase too few goods. And unless you're master class dumb, you know that every single time that leads to inflation. Thanks to the efforts of the Federal Reserve, inflation came down. It went down from 10% to today it's between 2 and 3%, depending on whose numbers you believe. And that's good. I'm happy it happened. That's called disinflation. When inflation goes from 10% to 3%, that means prices are still rising, but they're just not rising as quickly as they were, and that's a good thing. But it doesn't lower prices. It doesn't mean that we have now lower prices. They just aren't as high as they would have been if we hadn't tried to control inflation. That's called disinflation. Deflation is when prices actually go down. Deflation is when prices actually go down. And what the American people are wondering every single day as they sell blood plasma to go to the grocery store is, when am I going to get some relief from these high prices? And we do need to provide them relief. I want to talk about 3 ways that we are in the process of trying to reduce those prices that my Democratic colleagues caused. And I don't mean to pick on all my Democratic colleagues, but as I've said before, Mr. President, I like breakfast food and straight answers. And no economist in America believes that this inflation happened as a result of happenstance. It happened because of the breathtaking amount of money that President Biden spent. There are 3 things that we're doing to try to get these prices down. Number 1, reduce spending. You see it every single day from President Trump. He said he was going to audit federal spending, and that's exactly what he's doing. Now, there's some people that are mad. There are people that are very mad at President Trump and Mr. Musk and others for discovering all this waste. The people who are mad don't seem to be mad at the people who caused the waste. They're mad at the president and Mr. Musk for finding the waste. I find that a little bit ironic. But the point is, we're trying to reduce spending. And you're going to see it in our reconciliation bill that we're going to pass, as you know, Mr. President. You're going to see it in our budget if we ever pass one. We're trying to reduce spending because our debt's $36 trillion. And it's going up at the rate of $7 million a minute. I don't know, I've been talking 5 minutes maybe. It rose $35 million while I was talking. So we're trying to reduce government spending to get this debt down, but also to reduce our prices. Why does it matter? Because the less money that government spends, the less stimulative government is on the private sector. And when government spends money, there's a finite amount of money. When government spends money, it's money that we're spending instead of the private sector to create jobs, to increase wages. So the first thing we're doing, the new administration and the new Congress, is to try to reduce spending. And if we're successful, that will lower these prices. Number 2, deregulation. The federal government wants to regulate every breath we take. Every breath we take. I wish you could see all of the federal regulations. If you stacked them right here, if you stacked every single federal regulation right here, you could probably stand on that thing and paint the ceiling. It's just amazing. And each one of these regulations has a cost. The cost of all of our regulations today is in excess of $2 trillion. Not billion, not million, $2 trillion. What does that mean? That means when a business produces a product or it delivers a service and it has to comply with a meaningless, gnarly federal regulation, which costs money, that extra expense is added to the cost of the product or the service. Duh. I mean, businesses have to stay in business. They can't eat the cost. So they pass it on. And that leads to higher prices. So the second thing that we're doing, we're working on it every day. It hasn't been talked about a lot. We've passed some bills here on the floor of the Senate, but the administration's doing even more. We're deregulating. We're getting rid of all of these excess regulations whose costs are greater than their benefit. And I think the president has said he's got a new rule that if you're in the bureaucracy and you want to promulgate a new rule, you can do it if it's really necessary, but you got to get rid of 10 others. If we do that successfully, that will reduce prices. So the first thing we're doing is cutting spending to get down these high prices. The second thing we're doing is implementing federal deregulation. The third thing that we're doing, we're working on it as we speak, as you know, Mr. President. We've got to grow this economy. I mentioned the high spending and the debt that's led to higher prices. Think about this. Since 2019, 5 years ago, the American population's increased 2%. The federal budget has increased 55%. 2% population increase, federal spending's up 55%. That's just a fact. The numbers are the numbers. Now, I know we've had some inflation, but we haven't had 55% worth of inflation. That's just a fact. And every dollar that the federal government spends is a dollar that business people don't have to invest. Why is that important? Because they invest, they grow their business, they add more jobs, the business becomes more profitable, and wages rise. So the third way we're attacking these high prices is by trying to stimulate the economy to increase wages so that we actually can grow out of these high prices, so that people will have more money to spend when they buy a car or go to the grocery store. We're not going to do that with tepid GDP growth. If you go back to 2010, 15 years now, America has experienced average gross domestic product growth. That means how much your economy is growing, as you know, Mr. President. Average GDP growth of a little over 2%. That's not going to get it. That's not going to get it. In fact, now when we have 2.5% GDP growth, we get so excited, we're so happy, we want to have a toga party. 2.5% is not going to get it. In order to grow out of these high prices and increase wages, we're going to have to increase GDP growth to at least 3%. And that used to be normal for America. That used to be very, very doable and very normal. How are we going to do that? We're going to do that through the tax code, Mr. President. We have about $4.5 trillion worth of tax cuts that we implemented back in 2017 that caused the economy to grow and wages to go up until COVID hit. Those tax cuts are expiring here very shortly, and we're going to extend them. If we don't, it'll be in effect a tax increase of about $4.5 trillion. And that'll send our growth down, not up. We're also going to change some other provisions of the tax code, and in doing so, we're not going to add to our deficit. We're going to match those tax decreases with spending savings so that we do not add to the national debt. And that's what we're doing on inflation. And I didn't want this to be lost in translation and because of all the other important things we're talking about. We're well aware that high prices are gutting the American people like a fish. But by reducing spending, by deregulating the economy, and by designing a tax code that looks like somebody designed it on purpose, we're going to get those high prices down.
First, let's talk about the elephant in the room, inflation. Senator Kennedy starts off by calling out the very real consequences of inflation. I mean, look at the prices at the grocery store, folks. Prices are skyrocketing, and it's hurting families, especially working-class families, the ones who are already struggling to make ends meet. Moms and dads are losing sleep at night, trying to figure out how to pay their bills because Biden's reckless spending is robbing them blind. The Biden administration wants to act like inflation is just a minor problem, but let's not sugarcoat it. Inflation hit 10% at its peak. That means prices were increasing every single day, every single month, and the cost of living was climbing faster than we could blink. But of course, they don't care because they have their cushy government jobs, right? For them, inflation is just another talking point. But for regular Americans, it's gut-wrenching. Now, here's where Kennedy really delivers the goods. He calls out the root cause of this inflation: reckless government spending. You hear it all the time, don't you? The American Rescue Plan, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, all these big-ticket programs that sound good on paper but end up costing the American taxpayer trillions. And let's be real, how much of that money is actually helping people? The answer is not much. It's crazy because what we've seen from this administration is exactly what Kennedy describes. Trillions of dollars pumped into the economy, and what do we get? More inflation. It's simple economics, folks. When you have too many dollars chasing too few goods, prices go up. The government spends money and we all pay the price at the register. But of course, the Democrats pretend like it's all for the greater good, when really it's just lining the pockets of their cronies and creating massive debt. Now, here's the kicker, and this is something a lot of people don't understand. Kennedy talks about disinflation. Now, don't get me wrong, disinflation is better than straight-up inflation. But what we really need is price relief. Just because inflation dropped from 10% to 2 to 3% doesn't mean prices are going down. They're still up. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. Sure, it's less painful, but it's not enough to fix the problem. The American people are crying out for relief. They're selling plasma to buy groceries, folks. This isn't some theoretical issue. This is real pain. And we need more than just a reduction in the rate of inflation. We need to bring prices down, not just slow down their rise. So, I'm with Kennedy. Let's get these prices under control once and for all. Now, Kennedy makes an absolutely crucial point. Cutting government spending is the first step in bringing down inflation. This is where we need to get back to basics. The government is $36 trillion in debt. That's a number so big it's hard to even comprehend. And it's growing at a rate of $7 million a minute. Yeah, you heard that right. $7 million a minute. That's money that could have gone into the economy, into businesses creating jobs, into workers' pockets. Instead, it's being flushed down the drain through wasteful, bloated government spending. If we want to lower inflation and get this country back on track, we need to stop wasting taxpayer dollars. We need to cut back on these ridiculous programs that don't do anything but burden the American taxpayer. Another thing Kennedy nails is deregulation. The government wants to regulate every breath we take. Every time a business has to comply with some new federal regulation, it costs them money. And guess what? That cost is passed on to you and me, the consumer. The total cost of all these regulations is over $2 trillion. That's trillion with a T. So every time a business has to jump through hoops just to comply with one of these nonsensical rules, the price of your food, your gas, your clothes, you name it, goes up. It's no wonder inflation keeps climbing. If we want to lower prices, we need to cut the red tape and let businesses get back to what they do best: creating jobs, producing goods, and driving the economy forward. Now, let's talk about Kennedy's third point, tax policy. And if you've been following me for a while, you know I'm all about cutting taxes. In 2017, we saw a major tax overhaul that actually worked. Businesses were able to invest more, wages went up, and the economy grew. But those tax cuts are about to expire, and if they do, we're looking at a $4.5 trillion tax increase. Here's the thing, tax cuts don't just help the rich. They help everyone. When businesses have more money to invest, they hire more people. Those people earn wages, spend money, and help the economy grow. But if we let those tax cuts expire, it's going to stifle growth, increase the cost of doing business, and make things worse for everyone. Now, Kennedy also makes a smart point about balancing the budget. He says that if we cut taxes, we have to match those cuts with spending savings to avoid adding to the national debt. And that's the kind of thinking we need in Washington. The only way to ensure that we don't continue to dig ourselves deeper into debt is to cut back on spending while still giving the economy the boost it needs. So, what's the bottom line here, patriots? Senator Kennedy is right. We need to cut government spending, deregulate the economy, and reform the tax code to get inflation under control. If we don't, we're looking at more years of financial pain for working-class Americans. The Biden administration's policies have caused a mess, and it's time for real change. If we don't act now, inflation will continue to rob the American people of their hard-earned money. We need leaders who are willing to take bold action, even if it means standing up to the establishment and the swamp. Kennedy's plan is a step in the right direction, and we need more of it. So what do you think, patriots? Do you agree with Senator Kennedy's plan to fight inflation? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with your friends. We've got to spread the word and fight for a stronger, more prosperous America. God bless you, God bless this country, and I'll see you in the next video.